What's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to another WordPress tutorial. In this video, we're going to continue the work we were doing on our Ajax login form. What we have right now and what we did so far was just simply generating the front-end files in order to have this login form. But of course, if we click on login, nothing happens and actually the page gets reloaded. So let's first edit a little bit the login form in order to have all the pieces in place to handle the form submission properly and the response data. And then we're going to style the CSS, the SCSS a little bit to make it show better. And then we're going to actually create the PHP and JavaScript section in order to make this thing work. So let's get started. If we access our auth.php in the templates folder, first we need to fix a little typo that I had in the previous lesson. The actual admin URL is admin-ajax.php, is not .ajax.php. Then we need a little data attribute here on the paragraph class status because we're gonna use this data attribute to select this paragraph in JavaScript and inject our answers or whatever error messages we could get. So let's generate a new data attribute called data message, but of course you can call it however you want, and I'm gonna give this value status. And then the last thing, we need an hidden input field that needs to be inside the form, of course, and the type of input field has to be hidden, of course, and the name has to be action, and you can write the value however you want. I'm gonna put alecad with 3D login because it's sort of like unique value, and this action is really important as we saw in the testimonial form when we generated that section, because is the name of the action that PHP will recognize, that WordPress will recognize during an Ajax submit, and will redirect and handle the WP Ajax form request. Okay, we did all our update to the form. Now let's update slightly the auth.scss. And I just want to do a couple of things that I forgot to do last time. And first, in the auth container, I want to create a simple box shadow that will increase a little bit the contrast and the visibility of the form if we are on a white background. So let's give it just a simple 15 pixel of Y coordinate, and then 30 pixel of blurriness, and then minus 10 pixel of contraption to make it smaller, and then an RGBA value of 0, 0, 0, and then 0.35 just to not have massive black something on this page. And of course, because we're adding in SCSS and we will add it also JavaScript, let's remember to open our terminal, point into the location of our plugin, and as usual run the gulp watch. Perfect, this is running without problem. We can get the terminal out of the way. Now that everything is saved, if we access our website and we refresh, we trigger once again the login form. You cannot see it, but we have a small, just a tiny drop shadow here. So if we, for example, we delete the image, we should, we don't have it because, it's a typo. Sorry about that. It's RGBA, not RBGA. So RGBA. Yes, I should have noticed because the little square didn't appear. So sorry about that. If we refresh once again, now we should have, yes, the drop shadow is also visible. Nice. The last thing that I want to style before continuing is the response of the status, because right now the status doesn't have anything. So if, for example, in the auth.php we write something like status message, something like that, and we save it, we go back in our front end, we refresh. If we check here, it looks really ugly. So let's style this just a little bit in order to make it look better and have a couple of classes variation for the error message or the success message. So here back in the auth.scss, if we scroll all the way to the bottom here, we can create a new class called status, of course. And the status is going to have just a couple of declarations. So the text align, I want it to be centered. Then the margin, I want to have top and bottom 5 pixel, and then left and right 0. Then I want a font size kind of tiny, a little bit small, so I can use the relative emphasis and put it at 0.7 rem. And then I want to increase or transform the text to an uppercase because it's too small. Uppercase, it looks kind of like better. I like it that way. And then let's make this font bold. So let's give it a font weight of 600. Perfect. Now let's create a couple of small variations. For example, if the status class has a class of error, we want to change the color to RGB, and we want 144, then 19, and then 19. So we are going to have a nice little red. And then we can do the same, another variation called success. And here we can have a color variation, RGB as well. We don't need the opacity of a little green. So 47, 129, and another 47. There you go. You can see the preview. We have the green. Perfect. Now we have these two color variations for our status message that we style. And if we check how it looks, we refresh here, we open it, status message here looks way better than before, way more styled and kind of like in line with the style of the page. It's great. Now we can move on. So first of all, let's access our auth controller. And in the auth controller, we can create finally the action that handles the Ajax request. And we already saw this in the testimonial controller, so I'm gonna go a little bit faster just to not repeat the same thing. Let's create a new action, and inside the action we wanna tap the WP underscore Ajax request, but in this case we want to tap only the no privilege Ajax request because the user will not be logged in, and we don't need to create an Ajax request handler if the user is logged in, because this form won't appear, won't show up, so it's kind of useless. And we just specify the action that we define in the form. In my case, it's alicat login. And of course, as usual, we are in object-oriented programming. Let's pass the instance of this class and then the name of whatever method you want to tap. I'm going to call this method simply login. So that's perfect. Scroll all the way down and let's create the public function login method. And in the login method, just a couple of things needs to happen. First, we need to check if the Ajax referrer, this is always a terrible word for me, but it's RRR, so complicated. And as usual, we need to check if the nonce it's valid and it's present in the form request. If it's not, this will return false and will take care of handling the error messages, and it will interrupt the execution of our script. So we can check if the Ajax dash login nonce, and this is the name that I specified in the form, it's identical to alicat underscore auth, that is the value of the nonce that I also specified in the form. If this all goes okay, we can start collecting all the information that we're getting from the post request of the form, and then using a built-in method of WordPress called WP Signon. So first, let's create a new variable called info, and info is going to be simply an array. So let's start with an empty array, and then let's start filling up this array. So info user login, and these are unique keys that we need to specify in order to properly use the WordPress method. We cannot define these keys as we want. We need to respect the keys of WordPress. So for WordPress, the username is called user login, and we can put inside the user login our post request with the user name field that we're getting from our form submit. Then we can duplicate this line, and this is user password. And of course, we can duplicate this and put as password. And then let's duplicate this line, and let's remove all these and set this to true, because we want to tell WordPress to remember our user and generate the cookie. So now we can create a new variable called, for example, user underscore sign on, or you can call this variable however you want. This variable will contain the response of a built-in method of WordPress called WP underscore sign on, and the WP sign on basically creates test actual sign on, like an actual login process, by passing two attributes. The first attribute is the full list of array that we specified before, the full list of data as an array, and the second is a boolean to let WordPress know if we want to use a secure cookie, but that's a whole other story. So we're going to just set to false because we don't need to set a secure cookie. So now we can check if this user sign-on has some errors in it. If it does, we can return a false response, like an error response. Otherwise, if this doesn't have any error, so it returns true and the sign-on was completed successfully, we can return a positive message. So let's do it. And it's just a simple check. So we can check these. If is underscore WP underscore error present inside the user sign-on. If it is, we can echo a JSON encode method that contains an array, and we did this already inside the testimonial controller, so this shouldn't be anything new. And we can specify a couple of attributes inside this array. The first one, we want a key called status, as usual, like we did in the testimonial. We can say the status is false, and then we can return a custom message if we want to handle the message in PHP and not in JavaScript. We can say, hey, this has a wrong username or password, something like that, nothing too fancy. And then because we're returning this JSON encode, we need to die the script and we need to interrupt it. Otherwise, the Ajax request will continue executing this even if we have a return or an echo, whatever you want to deal with this. If this is not happening, so this user sign-on doesn't have any error, we can return a positive response. So let's duplicate all this stuff and let's put it outside the condition here. And as you can see here, I'm not handling an else statement because if this is not an error, I want just the script to continue. I don't need to create an else statement. This keeps the code cleaner and easier to read. So let's say this is true, and then we can say something like the login was successful. So login is successful, redirecting, something like that. Or you can write whatever you want. In any case, when the login is successful, because this was an Ajax request, we need to reload the page. So we need to send the user somewhere. We cannot stay on the same page, otherwise the user won't see the differences in the website. WordPress needs to reload the entire site in order for the login to be actually visible to the user. And that's it. We did all the things that we had to do in PHP. Now it comes the juicy part, the JS, which is gonna be kind of long, kind of massive, but because also this is all repeated from the testimonial controller, I'm gonna try to go a little bit faster just to not repeat all the same things and re-explain stuff that I explained a couple of videos ago. So first, let's continue by extending this file and declare the last couple of variables that we'll need to use. So the first is the auth form that is gonna carry, of course, the entire auth form. So we can say document get element by ID that we specified before in our auth.php, and the ID is alecad-auth-form. That's perfect. And then we can define another variable that's going to be equal to status or whatever you want to call it. And the status is auth-form query selector, and we want to select the data attribute that we specified before. So inside the square brackets, we want to select the element that has a data message called status. And as you can see, this is the beauty of JavaScript. So we're using for a variable the variable that we declared before, because after the comma, the auth form variable is available. We don't need to wait for the execution of these and wait for the semicolon to happen. As soon as I declare something is immediately available, so I can use it concatenated sort of after the comma to tap another variable, to tap another element inside the form. So now we can pretty much do exactly the same that we did in the testimonial form. So in the auth form, whenever we have an event listener, and the event that we want to listen to is the submit. So whenever this is happening, let's pass the event with our arrow function. Let's put a semicolon here. And inside the event, the first thing we need to prevent the default event that it's going to happen, because we don't want to actually submit the form. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of issues. And then here we want to reset the messages. So whenever we write something like an error message, a success message, we want to reset the form messages, and we can use another method called reset messages here. And just as a placeholder, let's remember to specify a function inside the DOM content loaded, not outside like we were doing in the testimonials form, and I'm gonna tell you why later on this video. But let's declare these reset messages method or set messages function, and here reset all the messages. So as a placeholder, I'm gonna remember that I have to create this method actually. Then now we need to collect all the data of our form, so let's start doing it. First, we need to generate a temporary variable, so we can use let data, and the data is an object that has inside the name, and the name is the auth form. Let's tap the query selector of the auth form for only the input that has a name equal to username, and this one we want to just tap the value. Perfect. Then we can duplicate 2 times, and here we want to tap the password and use password both as a key attribute, and then the name is password. And here also we want to tap the nonce, and the nonce is actually just pass the nonce, and here the nonce is the alicad underscore auth. That is the one that we specified in the form, and we don't need a comma here because we collected all our data. Perfect. Now we need to validate a couple of things, and luckily we need to just validate, yes, let's validate everything, but we need to just validate the name and password, the username and password. If those 2 fields are empty, we need to return an error message. So we can say that a simple if statement, and it's gonna carry both. So if the data name is null, it's false, whatever, it's empty, or also the data password, it's null, it's false, it's empty, whatever, with the exclamation mark. We can say that the status that we tapped before, I want to update the inner HTML to say that inside I want these text like missing data, stuff like that, or you can write please fill up the entire form, or whatever you want to do. And then let's add the class. So let's tap the class list and let's say add error, that class that we specified before in our SCSS. Perfect. Then let's prepare the Ajax HTTP post request like we were doing in the testimonial form. So Ajax HTTP post request, and here we can specify the URL that is going to be equal to the auth form. In the data set, we want to tap the URL because like we did in the testimonial form, here we have a data set URL with the admin Ajax URL that where we need to push this form submission. And then we package everything inside the sweet parameters where we use the URL search parameters, and inside we format with the new form data the auth form, the entire form with all the input field and such. And if you're really confused about this, I strongly suggest you to go back and check the video about the testimonial form where I explain why we're doing this and what these methods do. Now we need to update a bunch of things and then submit the form. So let's say that in the auth form, I want to tap the button. So let's do a query selector, and let's say that the element with the name submit, that is the only one submit, because it's just a button, is going to have a value equal to logging in, something like that, or you can write whatever you want, like please wait. I just want to change the value from login to something else. So if the login takes a lot, at least the user has a visual response that the login is actually in process. And then I want to also disable the button. So let's duplicate this line and say that the disabled, it's equal to true. So the user cannot click multiple times on the same button and avoid to trigger the post request multiple times while it's still in progress. Now we can use the fetch and then built-in methods of JavaScript to do our Ajax request. So let's say the fetch method, we need to pass as a first parameter the URL and then a list of parameters that are going to be passed in the fetch. So the first one is the method. What we want to do, we want to have a post request. We set it 1,000 times. And in the body of this post request, we want to pass all the parameters that we formatted here with all the data that we have the auth form. That's perfect. Outside the fetch, or outside the parentheses of the fetch, we set a period, and then we say then. So at the end of the fetch request, we want to handle the result and transform the result into a JSON, because that's how we pass data from PHP to JavaScript, via the beautiful and amazing JSON. And after this, we want to catch. If we have an error, we can catch it with the arrow function, so we don't have to specify a nameless function. And if we have an error, let's simply reset the messages. I don't want to deal with anything else, because if there's an error, it means something was wrong in the code or something is not working in WordPress. So I don't want to deal with that. But of course, you can handle the error if you want. You can print it in the status. You can do whatever you want. I'm more interested in checking that after the catch, or then waiting for the response. So after everything was processed correctly by our Ajax request, we can check if the response is true or false. And first, also here, let's reset the messages, because probably the messages have been modified before. If there was an issue, there was an error, or simply the button is still in login, I want to remove that login in status of the button and remove the disabled. But here we can check if the response, first, if the response is identical to 0, it means that WordPress had some issues in handling this, or the response status is false, so we can just simply put an exclamation mark here. We can say that the status paragraph has an inner HTML message equal to the response message. So we're going to have a text inside with the same message that we specified in PHP. And then we want to say that the status, we want to add class list add of error, we single quote error, and then we can return this script. So we're not going to execute the script. If we don't have a response equal to 0, or the response status it's true, it means that the login was successful. And we can do status inner HTML, once again response message, because we have a positive response. And once again, let's duplicate this, but instead of adding the error message or the error class, we want to add the success class. And then we want to auth form reset everything. So we're going to remove the username and password, whatever the user wrote. And then, because we need to do a redirect, let's do just a simple location reload, just to reload the page without specifying anything. Save it. Perfect. Now the only thing that we have to do is define the reset messages, whatever is going to happen here. So the thing that are going to happen in this function is tapping the status and say that the inner HTML has to be empty. And then once again, tap the status. I want to tap the class list of the status and remove both success and error. So we can say the success or error. We can remove these both. We don't need to have them. And actually, these can be single quotes. And then we can also reset the form button, because here what we're doing, we are updating the value and disabling the button. So we can duplicate this and put it here and updating the value. And let's put back to the login and then disable, let's set to false. Okay, are we ready to test this? I think we're done. Do you think we're done? Well, let's take a look if we broke something. So first, let's refresh there. We don't have any JavaScript error. Perfect. Let's log in. Let's try status message. Oh, I have to remove here the status message default from the PHP here. So let's remove status message, because these needs to start completely empty. Sorry about that. Let's refresh once again. Login. Okay, wrong username and password. So the HTML or the HTTP post request is happening and it's working, but it shouldn't, because my username and password are empty. So why this is happening? Let's access the code and see in the Ajax. Let's see if Ajax less data URL. oops, I forgot the return. So even if this is happening with the missing data, I wasn't stopping the execution of the script. So everything else was still happening. Perfect. Now this should fix the issue. Let's refresh once again. Let's stay on the XHR to check the HTTP request, login, boom. Okay, no HTTP request, but we have the form error, missing data. Perfect. And the login button is not disabled. Okay, let's log in into our thing. Okay, let's put some gibberish and see if we have an error. Login, wrong username or password, so we cannot log in. Admin Ajax has the proper response like we specify in the auth controller. Now let's log in with the real deal. Admin, then my password, login. Login successful, redirect, look at that. We are redirected, or actually the page was reloaded, and now we're logged in because we have the admin. Wonderful. But if you try to actually access the dashboard, look what happened. We get prompt with the another login, like the default login of WordPress. This is happening because in our WP sign-on method, we didn't specify true to have a secure cookie storing. So the website won't store the cookie securely and won't allow the user to keep the profile logged in even after we refresh the page. So in fact, if we go back, yes, we have the admin dashboard, but if we refresh the page, we're not logged in anymore and the login form is still there. So let's simply access the auth controller and let's change the WP sign-on from a non-secure cookie to a secure cookie, and this will allow us to log in and keep our authenticated user logged in. Boom, now we're logged in. If we access dashboard, perfect, we are logged into the dashboard. If we access back the page, we refresh, we're still logged in and everything is working. Fantastic. So that's pretty much it for this lesson. Hope you guys liked it, and until the next one, as usual, happy coding.